When I see you beautiful women having these doubts about whether you are worth spending like X amount of money or not, it just makes me want to like crack that open so much and just like make you understand how valuable you are in this world. I have a confession to make. It's raining outside and I kind of only want to make films now when it's raining because it makes me feel so cozy. It makes me feel like we're sitting down to have a little coffee together and have a little catch up and a chat, and I'm so here for it. Today's video is on the somewhat gate-kept topic of money and clothing. It's going to be part one of a series that I'm going to do all about the different ways that we can self-sabotage, especially on our journey of personal style, and just letting go of some of those self-limiting beliefs that we all hold on some level. Where have they come from? What behaviors are they driving? And are there some ways that we can start to let those go and just let them fall away so that we can have more freedom in our lives, so that we can evolve to the next level of who we want to be? I also wanted to disclaim that this video is not financial advice by any means. We will be talking a little bit about money and how we spend our money, but you know, I'm not an expert, I'm not a financial expert, and I'm just going to be sharing my opinions because I have a lot of opinions, okay? The reason why I was thinking about doing this video is because it's Libra season at the moment, and if you're into astrology at all, you know that Libra is ruled by the planet Venus, and Venus is associated with beauty, yes, and how we express and put ourselves forward into the world. So she may be the goddess planet of personal style, in my opinion, but also tied up with everything to do with money, finances, and how we, obviously our relationships as well, but also our relationship to ourselves and our relationship to our self-worth. And to me, that's so fascinating because I find that often our relationship to ourselves, our relationship to our self-worth can be so tied up with our income, our finances, and also how we then spend our money in the world. And something that I see a lot of, especially with women, is that because a lot of us have been trained or naturally have the inclination to be very nurturing, very giving, we find it so easy to spend money on others, to spend money on our partner, to spend money on our children, to spend money on gifts for other people, friends and family. And so obviously that comes up this time of year as well, because we're going into the season of giving. And then whenever it comes to spending that money on ourselves, there can be that hesitation, that reluctance, and for some reason there is that little bit of a blockage there where we would never hesitate to buy that item for someone else, to treat someone else to that. But when it comes to treating ourselves, for some reason it's like there's this blockage, there's this reluctance, this hesitation. And I want to look at why are we not honoring ourselves in the same way that we are just honoring other people without hesitation, the same way that we are giving to other people. Why are we not pouring that back into ourselves as well? I also got a comment on my community page, I believe it was recently, from one subscriber who was saying that she had her eye on a certain specific item, but she's not comfortable spending that much money on an item, even though she can afford it. And this, again, just was so intriguing to me because it's something that is really, like, it hit home. I recognize that tendency in myself, and I feel like so many of us hold these beliefs and these areas of discomfort within ourselves about how much is too much to spend on me, how much is too much to spend on a certain item, and yet in that same scenario we would never hesitate to buy that amazing jacket for our mom. We would never hesitate to buy that, you know, amazing like little dress for our daughter, you know. What is it where we can give so freely to other people and yet we have this blockage where we can't do that for ourselves? This is fascinating to me. Okay, so if we just take a step back and look objectively for a second, you could look at the way that we spend money as just purely being, you know, kind of like a percentage of the money we make, and kind of just a reflection of, okay, well, I make less money and therefore I spend less money on clothes. Or, okay, now I'm making more money and now I'm going to allocate more money to my clothes, right? This is actually not what happens. I read this amazing book called Get Rich, Lucky Bitch. And I know it's a dreadful name, but such a good book, and I will leave it linked below if I can find a link. And essentially it's all about how you take your money mindsets with you wherever you go, no matter how much money you make. Can take a look at the statistics of, say, people who win the lottery and the amount of people who file for bankruptcy like X amount of years after they've won the lottery. It just goes to show that just because you get this influx of income, it does not automatically fix your money mindsets. It does not automatically make you have this ability to handle that wealth. If you are self-sabotaging, you will still be self-sabotaging if you have $1 million, $10 million in your bank account. And the thing is, I genuinely know millionaires who dress poor and who dress like you would never know that they have money. And equally, if you look at the designer market, the actually majority of people who are buying designer items are not people with the highest income and the highest salaries. They're generally people of lower and middle incomes who are just aspiring to have this higher income lifestyle. It's generally not really a reflection of how much we're making, but rather it's a reflection of how much we're valuing ourselves and where we're placing the value as well. And of course, our comfort level, where we sit on the scale of how comfortable we are with spending different money in different places, that's going to be so personal and so on a sliding scale, not only of how much we earn, but also just on our personal values as well. And I mean, you could just put a full stop right there and be like, oh, well, it's personal. That's the end of the story, right? But there's so much more that goes on underneath the surface that is not often talked about. So I just wanted to bring it up and into the conversation today so that we can start actually looking at why we believe these things about ourselves, why we behave the way we do, and is there some way that we can loosen the grip of these limiting beliefs on ourselves so that we can finally start stepping into our worth. This video is not sponsored. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm purely trying to dive in and unpack a topic that I think it just so needs to come out and come to the light so that many of us can really look at why are we holding ourselves back in our own lives, and can we step more into the fullness of who we are. And no, the fullness of who we are is not about spending more money on ourselves. That's a very reductive way of looking at things, but it definitely is one aspect of just a little indication or a reflection of, are you willing to value yourself? Are you willing to value the things that you love? And are you willing to put your money where your values are and stand behind them? When we think about price of clothing, there are a few different rungs, obviously, on the ladder of price, and everybody's going to buy in at the level that they feel comfortable. But at the very, very bottom, we have, say, fast fashion, something that almost anyone can buy, but it's essentially disposable clothing. It's questionable business practices. It is, harming people, harming planet. We all know this about fast fashion. However, if you can't afford anything other than fast fashion, your hands are kind of tied. So on the lower end of the scale, you then also have the secondhand market, which I personally love to shop in. And I feel like for most of us who actually also have values that we want to uphold, as far as not supporting fast fashion, not supporting brands with, questionable ethical practices, the secondhand market is kind of like this little loophole where our money doesn't have to go directly to the companies that we don't want to support, but we can still find, clothing pieces that suit us, that suit our style, that speak to us, and also that are then like upholding our values. The irony about clothing that's on like the higher end of the scale, especially when you get into like haute couture and designer pieces, is that a lot of designer pieces are handmade, are ethically made, are beautifully made. And then there's also pieces that are on that same high level that are made in literally the same factories as the fast fashion, that are in the same like questionable conditions, that are having like absolutely no transparency with their supply chain, etc., etc. So it kind of becomes this like really gray and like sticky thing where, you know, we want to get the most value for our money, number one. We want to support the brands that we want to support, number two. And then we also want to uphold them to this certain standard. And price does not always reflect the standards that we expect. So I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. I'm just bringing it into the conversation. I think for many of us, the sort of brands that are in the middle rung are like the sweet spot, because there are so many beautiful, ethical, amazing brands in that middle section where like it's not fast fashion prices, but it's not designer prices, where we can still like afford it, or we can like stretch to save up to afford a piece. But then that will be something that will last in our wardrobe for years, that we will love wearing time after time, and that we know our money has gone and supported a brand where we stand behind their values. For me on my channel, my focus on my content going forward is going to be more on these brands that kind of rest in the middle realms. I really want to start highlighting more brands that I respect, that I love, that I stand behind their values, and especially brands where I don't see too many other content creators talking about them, collaborating with them, for whatever reason. So let's come back to this comment of, okay, I love this piece, I've had my eye on this piece, I'm not comfortable spending that much money. I feel like the majority of the time when we have discomfort around something, especially around spending money, it's usually from a deeper issue. And because money is so tied up with self-worth and like where we're placing our value, where is this discomfort coming from for me? You can look back in your life and think about, what were the money values in my household growing up? What was I taught about money as a young child? What are the programs that I have running in my mind that I am telling myself and believing about money, about how I can spend my money, and what is and what isn't, appropriate to spend? I actually feel that a large part of stepping into really adulthood and womanhood is acknowledging that you are worth it. We don't have to justify our spending of our own money to anybody else. We don't have to hum and haw about, am I worth this much? I feel like if you want something, you are worth that. Generally, if we are uncomfortable with spending money on a certain thing, or spending money on something that we feel is maybe frivolous, like our appearance, it usually comes from this kind of mindset of scarcity, this mindset of lack, or this mindset of that's not valuable or that's not important. I think for most of us, it really takes a little bit of a reframe. I'll give you a story, okay? I remember buying this particular necklace. This is a beautiful piece from Pamela Card. I have admired her work, when I say for years, I have admired her work for years, like since I first saw it being showcased on Dearly Bethany's channel, probably 5+ years ago. And this year, the start of this year, I finally decided to bite the bullet and buy this, and I saved up for it. And even though I had the money to buy it, it was still like, took me like a month of like putting it in my cart and taking it out again and going back and coming back. And it was such a back and forth journey for me to finally invest in this piece. What I learned on that journey of going back and forward with myself and negotiating with myself and telling myself like, you could spend it elsewhere, or you could spend it over here or over there. I learned so much about how my brain is like constantly trying to keep me safe. I learned so much about how my brain is constantly trying to negotiate my worth. I learned so much about how I view myself, how I view my values, and it really took a push for me to step into the version of myself that is someone that can spend money on me, is someone that can like push myself outside of my comfort zone and purchase something that I know I will love for literally years, if not decades, possibly even pass down to my children. Like, to actually step into that energy of I'm worth it and this is what I love and I'm going to go and get it. And it was so much the opposite mode of my constantly looking in op shops, constantly going to the sale rack, always trying to spend as little as possible and pushing myself to actually spend an amount of money that I was very uncomfortable spending on something that I genuinely loved and still love, and like literally wear this almost every single day. And the way that I was able to work through those money blocks taught me through so much. Now, I'm not saying that you should be spending outside of your means. I'm not saying that every time we want something, we should go and get it. I'm not saying that we're all going to now become shopaholics and like, I'm worth it and no matter what it is, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to have 7 credit cards and I'm going to go into debt. That's not the energy that we're bringing. But it's, if you have that same mindset that I had, that I still have to a certain degree, that it is difficult to spend money on yourself. It's difficult to prioritize yourself. Please know that I see you. I know exactly what you're going through, and you can take tiny steps towards making more intentional choices. If we take this one necklace as an example, this is something that I am able to wear every day. This is something that is made out of obviously precious metal and that will last for years, for decades, if not for like hundreds of years. It's something that's an heirloom piece and that I can pass down to my children. Would I have been comfortable spending that same amount of money if it was, say, a t-shirt or like a jumper that's like possibly going to get holes, that possibly is not going to have that longevity and last that same amount of time? You know, there's a difference there between those two different types of items. The reason why I started with something like this, because even though it's seemingly insignificant, even though it's seemingly like that's not something that you need to get dressed on your body every day, nobody needs a necklace, that's just like an adornment. At the same time, this to me was symbolic. This to me was an amulet. This to me was something that was representing to me and now also represents to me every single day that I put it on, my self-worth. And I actually also said like a blessing over this necklace whenever I first received it and put it on, and said affirmations to myself, so that every time that I put this necklace on, it just reminds me of those affirmations. It reminds me of the person that I want to be when I'm wearing it, and it allows me to bring that, you know, version of myself with me as I go through my life. So this to me represented so much more than just buying a necklace. It was just, there was so much for me tied up in this one purchase, and nobody from the outside would be able to see that. Looking at this necklace, they wouldn't think like, oh yeah, that's her self-worth dangling there or whatever. But leaving that to the side for a second, you can extrapolate out to the rest of your wardrobe. A purchase of an item of clothing can genuinely represent so much more to you than what somebody else outside of you might be able to see or to understand. I hope that what you're getting from this is that you will only ever receive sort of gentle encouragement from me. I'm not trying to get you to go out and spend all your money. I'm somebody who really values being intentional with your spending, being intentional with your actions. And I think that so many of you resonate with that. And I love the subscribers and the community that we have on this channel, because I think you guys just feel me and you just know the same kind of level that I'm at. And speaking with so many of you in the comments, you already are so aware and so attuned and just so, you know, so thoughtful, and it just genuinely inspires me so much. So when I see you beautiful women having these doubts about whether you are worth spending like X amount of money or not, it just makes me want to like crack that open so much and just like make you understand how valuable you are in this world. It seems it seems so frivolous, but the fact that you are negotiating with yourself about whether or not it's worth it to spend this money on a jacket or whatever, like, you are worth so much more than you know. You are worth so much more than you know. And I know that this is like coming at it from like a pretty like quote unquote frivolous perspective of like how much money are we spending on our clothing, right? But it genuinely runs so much deeper than that. And I'm just hoping that more and more that we can explore our own worth together, that we can step into our confidence together, and that we can help each other remember and realize how beautiful we are, how much we deserve to have in our lives. And I just wish that I could express that to you, and I wish that I could just like beam it through the screen to you, how much you are worth that you don't even realize. Anyway, something that has helped me has been really delving into what are my values and do they align with this particular brand that I'm considering. If a brand is going above and beyond to create an ethical supply chain, for example, that's going to make me so much more motivated to support them than a brand that's just within my price range, right? Obviously, we're looking at pieces that speak to our heart, that make us sing, that we look at them and we think, oh my God, I love it so much. And there are so many brands that do pieces that we love. And then there are the brands that align with our values and the brands that don't necessarily align with our values. And I think what can help us to spend a little bit more of an uncomfortable amount is to think about the values that that brand holds and whether they align with ours. To think about what that brand or that piece represents for us in our life. I really hope that you guys are like seeing my heart on this, and that I'm not just trying to enable you to spend your money willy-nilly. I'm trying to enable you to see your own worth and to just move beyond some of the thoughts that we can have in our minds about why certain things seem like they would be too much to spend. There's definitely pieces that just have like a ridiculous price tag. I think that we can tell the difference between something that's just too expensive because like that's ridiculous and why would I spend that on like a piece of clothing, and then there's like another piece that might be on the pricier end, but it's for reasons of like it's an amazing company, they have an ethical supply chain, they use regenerative cotton or whatever the case may be, and it might be a little bit uncomfy for us to spend that money, but at the end of the day, like, we know it would be worth it. Obviously we can source pieces secondhand, obviously we can wait for sales on specific items, and like we all want to value ourselves, we all want to value our money. It's not about being frivolous about spending. It's a different discussion to think about the brands that are kind of outside of our price point. Like that's kind of a different thing. I'm not saying that everybody needs to be spending outside of their means in order to have the things that you love. I feel like that's just self-sabotage in another way. Oh no. All right, my baby just woke up, so it's time for me to wrap this discussion up, and we will talk more about this in the next episode of the self-sabotage series. Thanks so much for being here, and I'll see you really shortly in my next one. Bye.